The hospital never really slept. Even at 7:30 in the morning, the air inside St. Aurora Medical Center felt heavy, a mix of disinfectant, silent prayers, tired footsteps, and hope that clung to every wall. Nurses moved quickly, doctors spoke in low urgent tones, and the sound of machines beeped like a constant reminder that life here was fragile. At the front desk sat Ayla. She was 24, soft-spoken, and wore her reception uniform neatly every day. Her hair was always tied back, not because it was required, but because she believed professionalism started with small details. She wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, and wasn't anyone special in the eyes of the world. But she noticed everything. She noticed which patients were scared but pretending to be strong. She noticed which family members hadn't slept all night. She noticed which nurses treated people like numbers, and which ones treated them like humans. And she noticed him. He first appeared on a rainy Monday morning. Ayla remembered it clearly because the rain had soaked the hospital entrance, and the floors were still wet when he walked in. He wore simple clothes, a dark gray hoodie, slightly faded jeans, worn-out sneakers. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. He looked ordinary. He approached the reception desk calmly, his hands in his pockets. "Good morning," he said. His voice was polite, controlled, deep, but gentle. Ayla smiled. "Good morning, sir. How may I help you?" "I'm here to visit a patient," he replied. "Room 614. She typed the room number into the system. "May I know the patient's name?" "Mr. Hassan Malik." She checked again. "Visiting hours start at 8 a.m. It's still a little early." "I understand," he said without complaint. "I'll wait." Most people argued. Some begged. Some tried to use influence. He didn't. He stepped aside and sat on a chair near the wall, pulling out his phone but not using it much, mostly observing. That was the first thing Ayla noticed. He watched people. Not in a creepy way. In a thoughtful way. When the visiting hours started, he stood up, nodded to Ayla politely, and headed toward the elevators. "No, thank you. No, sorry. Just quiet respect." The next day, he came again. Same time. Same clothes, maybe a different hoodie, but still simple. Same calm expression. "Good morning," he said again. "Good morning," Ayla replied, recognizing him. "Room 614. She smiled slightly. "You're very punctual." He smiled back, briefly. Time matters in places like this. That sentence stayed with her. Over the next 2 weeks, he became a routine. Every day, same time. Same patient. Same behavior. Some staff noticed him too, but not kindly. "There's that guy again," one nurse whispered once. "He looks suspicious," another said. "Probably some poor relative hoping for free treatment," someone else muttered. Ayla heard it all. And every time, something inside her tightened. Because she noticed how he never complained when nurses were rude. How he always stood up to let elderly patients sit. How he once helped a janitor pick up spilled cleaning supplies without saying a word. One afternoon, a security guard stopped him. "You can't loiter here," the guard said sharply. "I'm visiting a patient," the man replied calmly. "You come every day. This isn't a cafe." Ayla looked up immediately. "He's allowed," she said, keeping her voice firm. "He's a registered visitor." The guard frowned but stepped back. The man looked at her, surprised. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" she asked. "For seeing," he replied, then walked toward the elevators. That night, Ayla couldn't sleep. Why did that simple sentence feel so heavy? A few days later, something happened that changed everything. A woman rushed into the hospital crying, dragging a young boy behind her. The boy was pale, barely conscious. "Please help. My son," she sobbed. The front desk was chaos. Phones rang. A nurse snapped, "Fill the form first." The woman panicked. Ayla didn't think. She stood up, came around the desk, and held the woman's shoulders. "Ma'am, look at me," she said calmly. "He'll be okay. I'll handle everything." She called emergency services, alerted the doctors, and guided them personally. In the middle of it all, she felt eyes on her. The man. He stood near the entrance, watching quietly. Not impressed. Not shocked. Evaluating. Later that day, when things settled, he came to the desk. "You handled that situation very well," he said. Ayla smiled tiredly. "It's my job." "No," he replied. "It's your character." She looked up at him. "You sound like you know hospitals well." He smiled faintly. "You could say that." A pause. "Can I ask you something?" She said. "Of course. You come here every day. Is Mr. Malik someone very close to you?" He didn't answer immediately. "Yes," he said finally. "Very close." That was all. But Ayla sensed something deeper. Something unspoken. Days turned into weeks. Their conversations grew slightly longer, never personal, but meaningful. He asked her how long she'd worked here. She asked him how the patient was doing. They spoke about kindness, pressure, humanity. Never names. Never backgrounds. One day, Ayla overheard something she wasn't supposed to. Two doctors talking quietly near the elevator. "The CEO is supposed to visit soon," one said. "Again. I heard he sometimes comes unannounced," the other replied. "Yeah. They say he checks staff behavior himself." Ayla didn't think much of it. Why would she? The CEO was a distant figure, powerful, untouchable. Certainly not someone who wore old sneakers and sat quietly in the waiting area. That same evening, the man came later than usual. He looked tired, exhausted. "How is Mr. Malik?" Ayla asked gently. He looked at her, and for the first time, there was emotion in his eyes. "He passed away this morning." Ayla felt her chest tighten. "I'm so sorry." "So am I," he said softly. There was silence. Then he said, "Tomorrow will be my last visit." Her heart sank, and she didn't know why. "I hope wherever you go next," she said, choosing her words carefully, "you find the same kindness you showed here." He smiled. "I already found it." And with that, he walked away. Ayla watched him until the elevator doors closed. She didn't know it yet. But everything she believed about her job, her life, and that man was about to change. The next morning felt different. Ayla couldn't explain it, but as she walked into St. Aurora Medical Center, there was a strange weight in her chest. The front desk looked the same. The lights were the same. The noise, the footsteps, the hurried voices, everything was normal. Yet something was missing. The chair near the wall where he used to sit was empty. She kept glancing at the entrance, subconsciously expecting to see that familiar figure walk in, hands in pockets, calm eyes scanning the room. But the doors opened and closed again and again, and he didn't appear. He said yesterday was his last visit, she reminded herself. Still, the silence felt loud. Around mid-morning, a sudden shift in energy swept through the hospital. It started small. A senior nurse rushed past the desk, whispering urgently into her phone. A department head adjusted his coat nervously. Two administrators stood near the elevators, speaking in hushed tones. Something was happening. Ayla leaned slightly toward another receptionist. "Do you know what's going on?" She shook her head. "No idea." But everyone looked stressed. An hour later, the stress became visible. Staff behavior changed instantly. Nurses who usually ignored patients suddenly smiled too much. Doctors who never looked up now spoke politely. Even the security guards stood straighter, uniforms perfectly adjusted. Ayla noticed it all. And she didn't like it. Because she knew it wasn't real. A woman approached the desk, visibly anxious. "Excuse me, my father has been waiting for his test results since yesterday. No one is telling us anything." Ayla checked the system. "I'll find out for you." Before she could stand, a supervisor appeared beside her. "Tell her to wait," the supervisor whispered sharply. "We're busy today." Ayla looked at the woman's tired face. "She's been waiting long enough," Ayla replied calmly. "I'll check." The supervisor's eyes narrowed. "Just do what you're told." Ayla hesitated. Then she stood up anyway. She walked toward the diagnostics department, ignoring the supervisor's glare. She spoke to the technician directly, got the update, and returned to the woman within minutes. "Thank you," the woman said, her eyes filling with tears. No one else even listened. Ayla smiled gently. "You're welcome." Behind her, the supervisor crossed her arms. "You like creating problems, don't you?" she said later, when no one was around. "I like doing my job," Ayla replied. That afternoon, Ayla overheard another conversation, this time clearer. "The CEO is definitely coming today," someone said. "He's already inside the building," another whispered. "They say he watches everything." Ayla's stomach tightened. She remembered the man, the quiet observer, the calm presence, the way he watched people, not judging, but measuring. A ridiculous thought crossed her mind. She dismissed it immediately. Impossible. Later that day, something happened that exposed the hospital's true face. An elderly man collapsed near the waiting area. His daughter screamed for help. For a moment, no one moved. A nurse glanced over, then looked away. "Call emergency," she muttered, continuing her paperwork. Ayla didn't wait. She rushed out from behind the desk, knelt beside the man, and called for immediate assistance. She directed traffic, cleared space, and shouted until a doctor finally arrived. As they wheeled the man away, Ayla felt hands shaking, not from fear, but anger. How could people who worked in a hospital forget why they were here? She stood up slowly. And then she saw him. Standing near the corridor entrance. The man. Same simple clothes. Same calm posture. Watching. Her heart skipped. He said yesterday was his last visit. Their eyes met. For a brief second, something passed between them, recognition, understanding, and something heavier. He nodded slightly. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into a restricted hallway marked, "Authorized personnel only." Ayla froze. That hallway was not for visitors. Her mind raced. Before she could think further, the supervisor grabbed her arm. "What did you do back there?" she snapped. "Do you know how bad that looked?" "How bad it looked," Ayla replied, pulling her arm away. A man collapsed. "You embarrassed the staff," the supervisor hissed. "Today of all days." "Today of all days," Ayla repeated quietly, "is exactly why someone needed to act." The supervisor stared at her coldly. "Be careful, Ayla. People who don't know their place don't last long here." That evening, Ayla was called into administration. Two managers sat behind a desk, their expressions stiff. "We've received complaints," one of them said. "Complaints?" Ayla asked calmly. "About your attitude. Your tendency to overstep." Ayla listened quietly as they spoke about protocol, chain of command, and image. When they finished, she spoke. "I respect rules," she said. "But I respect human life more." Silence. One manager sighed. "This hospital runs on discipline. And it survives on compassion," Ayla replied. The meeting ended without resolution. As Ayla left the room, she felt something shift inside her. Fear. No. Clarity. That night, as she was preparing to leave, she found an envelope on the reception desk. No name. Just her initials. Inside was a simple card. "Not everyone passes the test. Some don't even realize they're being tested." No signature. Her hands trembled. She looked around. The hospital was quieter now. The lights dimmer. She suddenly understood. The man wasn't just watching people. He was testing them. Their kindness. Their integrity. Their humanity. And somehow, she had been part of it. The next morning, Ayla walked into work knowing something big was coming. She didn't know if she would be rewarded or fired, but she knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't change who she was. Because whoever that man truly was, he had already seen her. The hospital was unusually quiet that morning. Not peaceful, tense. Ayla felt it the moment she stepped through the glass doors of St. Aurora Medical Center. Conversations stopped when senior staff walked past. Smiles looked practiced. Movements felt rehearsed. Everyone knew something was about to happen. At exactly 9 a.m., a message flashed across the internal system screens. All department heads and administrative staff. Mandatory assembly, Conference Hall A. Ayla's heart began to pound. Reception staff were usually not included in such meetings. Yet 10 minutes later, a supervisor approached her desk. "You're coming too," she said flatly. Ayla nodded, wiping her palms on her uniform. The conference hall was packed. Doctors in white coats, managers in suits, nurses standing in straight lines. Everyone whispered, anxious, alert, afraid. At the front of the hall stood a long table and a podium. Empty. Minutes passed. Then the side door opened. And the room felt completely silent. He walked in. No hoodie this time. He wore a perfectly tailored dark suit, crisp white shirt, and a simple watch on his wrist. His posture was confident, controlled, the kind of presence that didn't demand attention, yet commanded it effortlessly. But it was his face. The same face. The man who sat quietly near the wall. The man who waited without complaint. The man who watched. Ayla's breath caught in her throat. Gasps rippled through the room. Some staff looked confused. Others looked terrified. A few turned pale. He walked to the podium and placed his hands on it calmly. "Good morning," he said. The same voice. Polite. Deep. Controlled. "My name is Adam Malik." The name hit the room like a shockwave. CEO. Founder. Owner of the entire hospital chain. Ayla felt her knees weaken. He looked around the room slowly, letting the silence stretch. "For the past 6 weeks," he continued, "I have been visiting this hospital almost every day. Not as your CEO. Not as your boss." He paused. "But as a visitor." Murmurs spread. "I came here wearing simple clothes. I sat in your waiting areas. I observed how patients were treated when no one important was watching." His eyes moved across the room. How visitors were spoken to. How emergencies were handled. How kindness disappeared the moment pressure appeared. A bead of sweat rolled down the supervisor's temple. Adam's gaze shifted, and landed on Ayla. She felt frozen. "Some of you failed," he said calmly. A sharp silence followed. "And some of you," he continued, "didn't even realize you were being tested." He stepped away from the podium and began walking slowly across the front row. "I saw nurses ignore patients. I saw staff prioritize forms over human lives. I saw supervisors silence compassion in the name of discipline. Every word felt like a verdict." Then he stopped walking. "I also saw something else." He turned fully toward Ayla. "I saw a receptionist leave her desk to comfort a mother in crisis. I saw her stand up to authority when someone collapsed. I saw her choose humanity over protocol, again and again." The room went deadly still. Ayla's heart hammered so loudly she was sure others could hear it. Adam raised his voice just slightly. "Ayla, would you please stand?" Her legs trembled, but she stood. Every eye in the room turned toward her. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. She swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Did you know who I was when you defended me from security?" he asked. "No," she replied honestly. "Did you know who I was when you chose to help patients instead of pleasing your supervisors?" "No." He nodded. "That," he said firmly, "is exactly why you're standing here." He turned back to the crowd. Compassion that depends on status is not compassion. It's performance. Silence. Adam returned to the podium. "As of today," he continued, "there will be changes." He gestured to a folder beside him. "Several supervisors and staff members will be suspended pending review." Some gasped. Others looked down. "This hospital exists for patients," Adam said. "Not egos. Not power trips. Not fear." Then he looked at Ayla again. "Ayla," he said, his tone softening, "how long have you worked here?" 3 years, she replied quietly. "And in those 3 years," he asked, "has anyone ever asked for your opinion?" She hesitated. "No." Adam smiled faintly. "That ends today." The room stirred. "I'm appointing Ayla as Patient Experience Coordinator, effective immediately." Whispers erupted. She will report directly to my office. Ayla's eyes widened. Sir, He raised a hand gently. You already proved you can handle responsibility. Applause began slowly, then grew. Not forced, not polite, real. Later that day, Ayla stood alone at the reception desk one last time. Adam approached quietly. Same desk, he said with a small smile. She laughed softly. Same hospital. Different eyes. I owe you an apology, he said. For what? For testing you without telling you. She shook her head. If I knew, I might have acted differently. Exactly, he said. They stood in silence for a moment. Mr. Malik, she began. Adam, he corrected gently. Adam, she said, why did you really do all this? He looked around the hospital. My father, he said softly, was a patient here once. Long ago. He died waiting for someone to care. Ayla felt her chest tighten. I promised myself, he continued, that if I ever had power, I would make sure no one else felt invisible in a place meant to heal. He met her eyes. And today, I found proof that people like you still exist. Weeks later, St. Aurora Medical Center felt different. Not because of rules, but because of people. Ayla walked the halls now, listening, observing, improving. Staff knew they were seen. Not feared, seen. And sometimes, during quiet mornings, Adam would sit near the entrance again. Not to test, but to remember. Because respect doesn't come from titles. It comes from how you treat people. When you think no one